Panasonic launched a 40mm prime lens for the L-mount system. It might just be the perfect match for their new direction towards compact cameras. Let's talk about it. The L-mount ecosystem is shared between Panasonic, Leica and Sigma. It is a very good system. You can expect good results from it. However, the lenses themselves can be bulky and heavy. And for the S9, if you put a massive L-mount zoom on it, you immediately defeat the purpose of this camera. Its whole personality is about being small and light. So the lens choice here is actually more constrained than it appears. You are looking for something small enough that makes sense for this camera. When you run that filter, the options become narrow, and the 40mm f2 becomes interesting by default elimination. It is almost like a pancake lens, not quite as compact, but it is small, really small for a full frame lens. When you mount it on the S9, the combo fits in your pocket or sits comfortably in a sling bag and becomes the perfect option for everyday carry. For a lot of people who are still figuring out their relationship with their camera, size is everything. If you are leaving your camera behind because it is too big or bulky, you are not taking enough photos, this might not be an issue for professional photographers, but for casual shooters, a compact setup becomes much more usable. Focal length can be personal, but I do think that 40mm has a case to make for itself. 35 is the classic choice for the street shooters, wide enough to include the environment and the subject, almost documentary-like, a little bit raw. The 50mm is the standard lens with supposedly natural perspective, the workhorse, and the 40mm sits right in between, which means it has a lot of potential. It is close enough to 35 that you can work wide, environmental, and include context to your footage, but it pulls in just a touch more than 35. The compression is slightly softer, the perspective is a little less dramatic and more controlled. It's also close enough to 50 that you can isolate a subject and work in tighter space. It gives you just a little bit more breathing room than 50. Slightly easier to work indoors, more forgiving when you can't take a step back. So the 40mm isn't a compromise, it's a whole new perspective. In practical use for everyday shooting, for travel and family, for wandering around the city, 40mm is incredible. It is less demanding than 35 and less claustrophobic than 50. At least that has been my experience. I'm still figuring this out, so take that with some grain of salt. The build quality is on point, doesn't feel cheap at all. The aperture ring has good resistance, not too stiff, not too loose. There's a click stop button if you need silent shooting. The focus ring is smooth as well. Working with manual feels deliberate. And the mount is made of metal. It's no Leica, it doesn't have that weight or the mechanical feel, but it is solid and will last you for a long time. Talking about the image quality, the sharpness is phenomenal. Wide open at f2, the center of the frame is crisp and detailed. It does get softer at the edge, but you can use that as a stylistic choice. You can have that nice bokeh effect for subject separation. The out of focus areas are smooth and creamy. If you shoot with wide open aperture, the image quality will be upload ready. Color rendering on the S9 with this lens is lovely. Panasonic's color science is really nice to work with. The L Classic Neo or the Cine-like profiles are filmic and doesn't need a lot of post-processing. Throw a lot on top and you are close to done. The combination of S9 sensor and this lens produces image that looks like a dream. In the world of fast primes like f1.4, 1.2, f2 of this lens holds up very well. For me at least it does. Indoor events with bad lighting, weddings, concerts, restaurants with ambience, you're going to be pushing ISO harder than you like. The S9's sensor handles high ISO reasonably well. The f2 lets in enough light for it to not become a problem. If you learn the light before you shoot, you can bring out amazing results with it. You can lean into the S9's JPEG and video profiles. In low light, if you're shooting stills, a well-tuned JPEG straight from the camera with a boosted profile can hold up better. You will get less noise than RAW. These are things to consider when you are shooting in bad light. But for daylight, golden hours, overcast days, indoor spaces with decent windows, f2 is absolutely gorgeous. I mentioned the L-mount ecosystem before. It is a more expensive path than Sony or Canon. The third-party options are improving with Sigma's Art series adopted or native, but the variety isn't there yet. And it matters specifically for S9 shooters because the S9 attracts people who are new to full frame or returning to cameras after a gap or coming from a smartphone first workflow. People who don't have a lens library and are building from scratch. If that's you, it is worth thinking about before you commit. The S9 with 40mm f2 is already a one lens setup that handles most of what everyday life throws at you. Instead of thinking about all the lenses available in the market, think about whether this lens covers most of your shooting. For travel, street, family, casual video, I think it does. For vlogging or talking head content, if you're using the S9 to shoot yourself, the 40mm is a good focal length. At typical arm's length or a small tripod distance, it gives you good framing. not as wide as 24mm, not so tight that you are fighting to stay in frame. The f2 aperture gives you some background separation in video, which looks nice. The focus ring works well for manual full focus if you want that, and the autofocus on the S9 is solid, works reliably in good light that you can trust it for run and gun shooting. There's real value in a setup that's simple. You are not making decisions about which lens to pack, which bag to use, whether it is weather sealed. You just pick it up and go. Panasonic Lumix S40mm f2 on the S9 is a great pairing if you want a lightweight carry everywhere full frame setup and you shoot in decent light, outdoors, near windows, golden hour. The f2 aperture works very well but with limitations, and you should know where those limits are before you commit. If you were a creator who shoots a mix of stills and videos, this lens handles both well. The click stop removal, the autofocus performance in the good light, and the focal length, it all works for a video. I will assume you're building a small intentional kit rather than a sprawling beast. L-mount lenses are nice and easy to work with, and it is probably the best choice if you shoot for YouTube. Check out the links in the description if you are building a Lumix setup. I have also included some camera accessories like microphones and SD cards.